Been up, Jared still looking, now throwing right side. It is caught inside the 5, diving for the end zone, and getting in for the touchdown, Tim Patrick!
Welcome to Week 16 of the NFL season. I am Tim Twentyman. This is the Twentyman in the Huddle podcast, and we usually like to start out with kind of our three key segments. Looking forward to Detroit's next game in Chicago, and joining me via Zoom on her day off, very generous of Jennifer Hammond to join me. Fox 2, look, she's been at Fox 2 for 27 years. She's been covering the Lions since 1994. She does the post-game show on 97.1 after every Lions game. Jen, thanks for joining the Twentyman in the Huddle podcast. I appreciate you.
I'm super happy to be here, Tim. Thanks.
Well, Week 16, and, obviously a tough loss for, Detroit last week against Buffalo. You listen to outside of the building, it almost seems like the sky's falling, Jen, that the season's over. They should cancel it. Good luck. Try again next year. Now, look, I know they're dealing with injuries, but they've dealt with these injuries all year, Jen. Some of them have been big, and they've just kind of found a way. You listen to Dan Campbell talk this week, and he said, look, we're going to find a way again. Maybe it's, playing a little bit different. Try to maybe talk Lions fans off the ledge here. With 3 games remaining, they still are the number 1 seed.
I started that job of talking them off the ledge on Sunday as soon as the postgame show came on, and I had a feeling. I knew that it would start with the rage, right? The 7 stages of grief for Lions fans. Rage was one of them that came early about Dan going for that onside with 12 minutes to go. We'll push that aside. And now it's gone to actually remorse and sorrow and deep fear. Everybody just thinks that the season is over, to your point. And I think that it was Jared Goff that actually foreshadowed and said after the game, we're going to hear everybody saying that the sky is falling. It is not. And even a few weeks back, you'll go, I think it was after the game when Anzalone got hurt. Remember that Dan Campbell stood up at the podium either on that Sunday or that Monday, and he said, things are going to get worse. This isn't the worst thing that's going to happen to us. Things are going to get worse, and we're going to have to respond. So there was a little bit of foreshadowing going on there with both of those guys. And those are your two leaders. And when you hear those guys say, there's no doom and gloom, that is the message that's being crafted, curated in that building. And you see it, you know it, you hear it. And Dan on 97 won the ticket this week on Tuesday. He was brilliant. And he's a great motivator. And not only does he just say those words, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, those are just words. That's not going to get Aleem McNeil back or Hutch back. But what those words do is they let you know that he's not worried, and he can't be worried, and he can't spend his time. What they're going to do is they're going to plug, play, and push. And they still have a golden opportunity in front of them with 3 very winnable games. And I say very winnable because that Minnesota game is on their home field, but very winnable at Chicago against a team that has nothing to play for. Very winnable at San Francisco against a team that is broken and has not much to play for. So I'm not worried. I mean, certainly they've got to play their best, but I think they can do it.
All right, Jen, let's get into some of these 3 keys. And look, offensively, the injuries have really been to the defensive side of the football all year long. They've avoided some big-time injuries offensively up to this point. But obviously Sunday had a pretty big one with David Montgomery having the knee injury. He's still holding out hope. He did a coat drive this week. He's still holding out hope to maybe return. Dan didn't seem as optimistic. We'll have to kind of see where that goes. But now this lands on Jahmyr Gibbs and Craig Reynolds and Sione Vaki now to kind of handle that load at running back. And Jen, me personally, obviously that's a big loss. He's the heart and soul of that run game, right? He gives you those tough yards, but Jahmyr Gibbs is a very capable running back. I mean, we've talked all year about them being 1A and 1B, how either one would probably start on 30 other teams. So now he's going to get his opportunity here for the last 3 games and the playoffs to kind of carry that load. Concern level for you at all, or are you as confident as I am that he'll be just fine in that role?
My concern level for this injury, obviously, when it first happened, was maybe a 4. It has gone down to a 2, and I'll tell you why, Tim. Something we've seen from Jahmyr Gibbs, originally it felt like one was sizzle, one was steak, right? We had Sonic and Knuckles. One was the flash and dash. One was the hard yards. The the actual progression of Jahmyr Gibbs as a running back this season has been nothing short of incredible. The tough yards, the yards after contact that he has been able to get, the way he has shown that he can slip tackles, change direction, and make guys miss is really incredible. And I know that people get all ruffled when you compare anybody in this country to Barry Sanders, but there have been times that he has looked an awful lot like number 20. And he's a guy that can be the bell cow. Right now, he's rushing at a 5.6 yards per carry clip. Certainly, the Bills game was tough. They had a bad day, but a lot of that too was on the offensive line. And what we've seen from the offensive line is when they have a rough game, what do? They come back.
They come back strong.
Vengeance. And I think that we're going to see that this week against Chicago.
And Jen, this isn't the first time this has happened to the Lions too. You look at last year, Montgomery missed 3 games, and Gibbs had to step up and play a big role in those 3 games. And you look at the Raiders game in particular, I think it was 26 carries, 154 yards and a touchdown. He had 300 yards in those 3 games filling in for Montgomery, also chipped in 15 receptions. So it's not like this is something we haven't seen. He hasn't done. He's shown he can carry the load. It's not like he's going to be asked to do it for an entire season. They've got 3 games left here, and then whatever they've got in the playoffs. And so to your point too, I think he's evolved his game, that he can handle some of those inside the tackle stuff. And look, Craig Reynolds is a very capable backup. I mean, you saw the touchdown run on 4th down.
He's a veteran.
Yeah, he had the touchdown run in the playoffs last year. He's that between the tackles guy. I think he handles some short stuff. And how excited are you to see maybe a carry or 2 for Sione Vaki and kind of see where he's at?
You know what? It seems like everything that Brad Holmes has touched, for the most part, has turned to gold. So I think that Vaki is going to be a guy who's going to show that his value and worth is what they expected it to be, with some extended playing time. I don't know that he'll get more reps than Reynolds, because to your point, I love what Reynolds is able to do between the tackles. And he's such a good blocker too. And that is something they're going to miss with David Montgomery. Obviously, the way that he's able to, pick up the backers on the blitz, he does a really good job with that. And I think that's something that Reynolds might be a little bit better at. But it'll be interesting to see both guys get an opportunity. And the way that Dan Campbell has been able to motivate guys, and Scotty Montgomery, I mean, he's a great coach. And there's talk about him being a potential OC or even a head coach in this league. They've got great coaches that are in place to motivate, train, teach, coach, get these guys ready to go in and play. And I don't think they're going to miss a step.
I think we're on the same page there. I'm actually looking forward to it. I think they have a chance maybe to be a little bit more explosive even too.
I'm an eternal optimist, so you're never going to get me to naysay about the sky falling, okay?
I love it. All right, well, let's turn over to the other side of the ball, Jen. And obviously the injuries are mounting up. You lose Aleem McNeil, you lose Carlton Davis, you lose Khalil Dorsey this week. 3 more guys that, have played significant snaps for this team. And look, now guys are going to get another opportunity. Dan talked about it earlier in the week, and some guys are going to have to step up too. And some guys, look, there's still talent there, Jen. You still got DJ Reader, you still got Anzrike, you still got Pascal, you still have both Branch and Joseph. You've got Terry Arnold at this point really isn't a rookie. You've got some guys that can play. But who to you, with all these injuries, is there someone currently on that defensive side of the ball who needs to step up for you? Who do they really need to kind of take that next step to their game over the next 3 weeks?
All right, I've got 2 names for you. And
I wonder if they're going to be the same 2 I have. They might be.
We'll see. DJ Reader for sure is one. He has got to step up in the middle, and I think he will. He was a guy, I think, that took exception after the game on Sunday to questions about the defense being leaky and unable to contain Josh Allen and that Bills offense. Also, I think what they've got to do is they've got to find ways to manufacture pressure. I mean, certainly, they've blitzed a lot. They've played man a lot. They're going to have to change things up a little bit, but they're going to have to get creative. And I think that's something that Aaron Glenn can do. When you've got a week to practice with new guys in there, it's a lot more comforting and settling, shall we say, than it is when somebody goes down in the middle of the game and you got to plug and play, right? That's a little bit more chaotic. And also it's going to give another week for guys that have been there in the system. Jonah Williams, also Jamal Adams is going to probably get some more playing time. The other guy that I'm really leaning towards seeing in a different role and doing more, who I think is ready to take it on, is Amik Robertson. This is a guy who's got a whole lot of attitude, a whole lot of swagger, and he's a veteran, and he has made some great plays at times. And I think the one thing that we haven't seen from this defense that has hurt them significantly is the turnover ratio. They had 13 picks, right, through the first 9 games. They have just one in the last 5. So they're not taking the ball away at the same rate. And that gives their offense more chances. And we've heard even Dan Campbell say it when they were going into the game 2 weeks ago against Green Bay, that maybe when the defense is hurting, the best defense is a good offense. If they can keep their offense on the field, and that, lends to the running game being better and, sustaining some drives and getting some of those chunk plays on first down. If they can do those things, it's going to be infinitely more manageable for their defense. I mean, they were just on the field way too much on Sunday against the Bills, and I don't foresee any other team doing that to Detroit.
No, those are 2 good ones, Jen. And I think it'll be interesting too with Amik if they keep him in the slot, or if they're able to get Ifeatu Melifonwu back, what would that might do to Branch? Would he, how would they maybe switch some things up and change that rotation in the secondary? I think that'll be interesting. Dan talked about maybe they're identifying some changes, some guys playing some different roles. They'll have to practice it this week and see how that goes.
I think has great flexibility.
And Amik has played outside. He probably played his best ball outside when he was with the Raiders. So that'll be an interesting one. For me, the 2 are Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch. And it's for the reasons that you talked about that I highlighted as well. One takeaway, Jen, the last 4 games. I mean, to me, those are such game-changing plays that, look, when you're missing some guys, when you're struggling a little bit, sometimes just that big turnover that we saw a couple weeks ago with Carlton Davis, punching that ball out. Sometimes you just need that big turnover in their side that sets your offense up, that allows you to take that 2-score lead that then settles things down, right? That spark, it's great. And so, look, those are the guys all year that have been your kind of takeaway kings, right? They've led the team in interceptions. When you've needed a big one, they've gotten it. They've gotten away from that. So the 2 guys for me is those guys need to get back to taking away the football, creating those big plays. Help out those guys in front of you. You see it all happening in front of you. Go and make a big play. Spark this team. And to me, it's Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph that have to make those big plays. They have to step up these last 3 weeks.
And they're physical guys, and they're also emotional leaders, I think, for that defense. As young as they both are, I think they really play with a lot of emotion, and I think that those guys on that side of the ball really feed off that.
All right, let's talk about our third key, Jen, and it's really the offense picking up the slack, and it's Jared Goff. And really, how good has Jared Goff been, and can this offense continue to kind of carry the load?
Yeah, I think they absolutely can. And I know a lot of people don't like to look back to last season, but you almost have to look back to last season to maybe foreshadow a little bit of how they're going to get it done in these last 3 games and into January. And what they did last year was they outscored everybody, right? They had a little bit more of a leaky defense last year. And I think what their plan was, go and outscore people to the best of your ability, lean on our offensive line, run the ball with those guys, up front, and make sure that the other team's offense stays off the field, because they are going to continue to see guys who are as talented once we get to the playoffs. They're going to see quarterbacks as talented as Josh Allen. Fortunately, they won't have to see him again until February, if that is the case and they get there. But they're going to see guys, that are going to make life difficult for them. I'm sure Matthew Stafford is, really looking for it. And then if they have Tampa come back in again, I mean, this is a team they also lost to. So it's going to be tough for them if they can't get the offense clicking as it was. And you hear Jared say, we've missed some things. And whereas they played really, really well last week after those first 2 drives, they've got to play great from the jump. They've got to go down the field, score, and they can't really play from behind. I just don't think it's feasible. Jared's not going to throw the ball, 59 times every game for them to try to come from behind. I like their chances when they are behind because they've got, great mental fortitude and they've got that comeback mentality. But I think if they can play ahead as much as possible now, and that starts with the offense being proficient from the first quarter on the opening drive.
And really, Jen, what gives me a ton of confidence in this team still being able to get it done is just the way Jared's playing. I mean, you look at 7 games with a 75-plus completion percentage. I mean, he's second in the league in completion percentage. He's 4th in touchdowns. He's got a 30 touchdown to 10 interception ratio. He's got 110 passer rating. That's second only to Lamar Jackson. I mean, he is playing at an elite level. If not for Josh Allen, I think he's right there in the MVP conversation.
And do you feel like he still doesn't even get the respect? And I actually kind of like that. Go ahead, keep disrespecting the Lions. I think they love and thrive on that. And to David Montgomery's point, it's like the land of misfit toys. Go ahead. It's like the city of Detroit. Doubt us, count us out. I think it's just something that some people thrive on, and I think Jared Goff is one of those guys.
And I think it's perfect, Jen, too, that they're hitting the road for 2
Yeah.
weeks, too. You look at them 6-0 on the road this year. They're the only team in the NFL that's undefeated on the road. They get that us versus everybody else mentality at a perfect time when they kind of need to come together and do that stuff. I think it's perfect timing for them. And I got a lot of faith in Jared Goff being able to go there and score a bunch of points in Chicago and San Francisco. And that sets up a great one, Week 18. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but if it does, what a fun one it will be. It's crazy that we're Week 16 already, isn't it?
Yeah, it's insane. This season has gone so fast. And actually, if you look at the Vikings schedule, Tim, their next 3 opponents, combined record of 30-12. The Lions' next 3, 22-20. So a little bit of an easier road for the Lions, but nothing is easy in this league, as we know. And, it would be nice if maybe the Eagles or the Vikings would lose one here. We'll all keep our fingers crossed for that. But if they don't, the Lions very much have control of their own destiny.
Handle your own business, right?
Yep.
It's as easy as that. Jennifer Hammond, she's been doing it for a long, long time. Thank you so much for joining the 20-Minute Huddle podcast. I appreciate you. We're going to have you on again.
Thank you,
I will
Double
be
Dimes.
I'll be back with Jared Goff. Welcome back to the 20-Minute Huddle podcast. Very happy to welcome the quarterback of the Detroit Lions, Jared Goff. Thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This is
I
great.
get you once a year. I always look forward to this week. Before we get to football, let's start with this. The Walter Payton Man of the Year.
Sure.
Your second nomination for that. I know it's a valued thing in that locker room, and it just speaks to what you mean to this community off the football field too. Just how important of an honor is that for you?
Yeah, it's such a cool honor, and to me, it's one of the most humbling honors I've ever received, and it's my second time getting it now. And to be able to represent our team in that way, and to represent the league, and to know that all the kids were able to help, and that they're able to have a light shine on them for some of the stuff, that the publicity they're getting, it's very cool.
And I myself have a junior in high school, so I know we're starting to look at the college stuff and stuff. Yeah. I know you work with the FATE program. What was the look on their faces when that came out, that you're going to take care of 4 years of college for those kids? What a great thing on your part. Was the best part just their reaction, their faces?
Yeah, it's very cool. The program that they're in is guiding them along in that direction. But for myself and our program to be able to help them out a little bit in their journey, it means a ton, and I know they're so excited for it. I know they're all so driven and have such high character and are so creative and talented in the whole thing, and it's just an honor for me to be able to help them in just a small way that I can.
And I know the foundation's JG16. You got a website, right?
Yep.
People can
join in,
help out.
Yeah, every dollar spent on the website gets matched by me, and every dollar of that match plus dollar you spent. So you spend $10, $20 goes to the kids for their scholarships.
All right, we'll make sure we get that up on the screen there on the podcast so people can help out. All right, let's get to the football field. You guys lose a football game, first time in 91 days, and unfortunately it seems like the sky is falling. But look, this is the NFL. That's an MVP caliber guy over there that played out of his mind. You did as well, and they just had a little bit more that day. 3 and out, a turnover, that's the difference in a football game. But what was the message this week? Why isn't the sky falling? Why are you guys going to continue to keep playing? We're not canceling the season. You lost a football game, right? Is that what people have to just put in perspective?
I don't quite understand the sentiment of that. I knew it would happen at whatever point that winning streak would come to an end. Of course, you don't want it to come to an end. You want it to go all the way through the Super Bowl and you win every game, but it's hard. It's really hard, and I thought the Bills played great. I thought they brought it to us early on, and we weren't able to overcome it. But yeah, we're in good shape, man. We're 12-2. We've got 3 games ahead of us. We got a big division game this week, one that we'll be fired up for. I'm sure they'll be fired up on the other side, and we'll be going one at a time. We want to win this one, and then so on and so forth. But yeah, we're in fine shape. We'll be just fine, and I think Dan does a good job leading that charge and keeping us level-headed. And to be honest, people always, what's changed? What's different? Nothing. It's the same as it was last week. It's the same as it was the week before. Nothing's changed internally besides our record, and we're good.
You would have loved to win 15 straight, obviously.
Of course,
but look, this is the NFL. Right? It's hard to win in this league, and you guys did it for so long. But I think you mentioned it too, and Dan had the message that it was almost like a recalibration.
Sure.
He used the term, sometimes you get punched in the face. Can losing at this point in the season be a good thing sometimes? Can you view it that way?
If you handle it the right way. Yeah, absolutely. If you handle it the right way, and I think we're built to do that. So, yes, you never want to lose. You would like to win every game. But when you can lose in a way that you can learn from it and you can get better and come back the next week with maybe a little bit more fire and a little bit more urgency and a little bit more readiness in some aspects, then yeah, absolutely, it's good for you.
What was the learning points for you guys? What's the point of emphasis from Ben this week off last week? Obviously, you had a terrific game. The passing game did. The rushing game has struggled a little bit, which is uncharacteristic of you guys this year. Has that been maybe one of the things Ben's talked about, focused on? What's the message this week going into Chicago?
Sure. It's a little bit of everything. I think, at the end of the day, again, nothing's really changed because we lost a game. It's still the same messaging we've always had. We want to put up a ton of points. We want to put up a ton of yards. We want to be able to, sustain these games and win these games. And really the message is whatever it takes. At this point of the season, we don't care. Dan said it, I think, at one point this year, if it's 10 points or if it's 50 points. Of course, we'd like it to be 50 points, but, however many points it takes to win the game, we will be ready to do that.
You guys have pretty much been unscathed offensively in terms of the injuries, obviously heavy on the defensive side, but you get one this week with David Montgomery going down. We'll have to see if that's a season or not. I know he's getting a third opinion. Just how big of a loss is that? And then maybe on the flip end, just how much confidence do you have in Jahmyr, Craig, Jahmyr, Vaki, all those guys, that you could just keep this thing rolling? We talked to Ben Johnson this week, and he said, look, nothing changes. Jahmyr's ready for this moment. He's been groomed. We like where he's at. Just the loss, and then what you still have with Jahmyr, and can he handle this moment?
It sucks to lose David, not only for what he does on the field, but what he does in our locker room and in the huddle and throughout a game, and his energy and his ability to make big plays. And, it sucks. It's certainly something we'll overcome, but we'll have to. But, yeah, Gibby's as good of a running back as there is in this league, so if he's the guy that has to carry the load a little bit more, then we're certainly okay with that. And Craig and Jahmyr and Vaki will be right there ready to fill in when needed. And, we feel good.
Defense has dealt with a ton of injuries, as we know, 20 guys on IR. Do you guys, I don't know if you talk about it, but is there ever just a feeling, a thought that, hey, they're going through so much, and Aaron's going to have a good game plan, and he's been ready, and they've filled in guys, and they've played really, really good. Last week, that's a good opponent, like we talked about. They've done well defensively, but as an offense, do you guys ever say to yourself or think, hey, we know we've got to pick up the slack, right? Is that just what being a football team is about? Is that just playing complementary football?
I think, it's more that. It's more complementary. Pick up the slack's probably the wrong term. It's more, if it takes 34 like it did against Green Bay, then it takes 34. Last week it would have taken, 46? Or however many points. I don't know how many points they scored, but 49. 49, was it 48? Yeah. So it would have taken 49. If we would have scored one more touchdown, we would win the game. So whatever it takes, if it's 34, if it's 49, and Dan mentioned earlier in the week, if it's 10, if it's 17, whatever it takes for us offensively, we've got to be ready to do. And defensively, they'll be just fine. They'll be ready to go. They'll do their thing. They'll come out. They'll play hard. They'll play well, and we'll feed off each other.
How much do you admire what Aaron has done and all the different pieces he's had to place, and it just seems every week they find a way, and they do what needs to win a football game? How much admiration from the other side, and just looking at it, because I'm sure you see it in practice sometimes too, just some of the different changes, new guys, and everything else, just what he's gone through and what he's done to have that defense as playing as well as it has really consistently all year. How much do you admire what he's done?
Yeah, a ton. He's a stud of a coach, and never hear an excuse out of him. He's just going to find a way to make it work, and he's a great coach. We've got a lot of great coaches. That whole staff over there on defense does a great job, and I think our whole staff as a whole, offense, defense, special teams, is pretty special, and he's certainly a big part of that.
Last week you get Skip in the flat there. How much do you love that when you saw, you do the play fake and you see he sells it real great, does the block, and he's open in the just what's your thought? Is it excitement? Is it, oh my God, don't drop the ball?
Well,
is
it's
it
like, all right, I got to be delicate with this throw, because the ones that are hard, where when he is so wide open, it is hard. It seems harder sometimes to hit him with that. But yeah, I just wanted to give him a nice catchable ball, and if he scores, great. If he gets down to the one,
you knew he was running that guy over, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I know. He didn't have to. He could have ran right in, but he wanted to lower his shoulder on that guy, and I'm glad he scored.
How much do you love those moments for those kind of players, right? I always consider guys like him and Khalif and stuff like that, like glue pieces to a roster, right? Like guys that'll just step in, do anything, make plays when they have their opportunities, and I've fought to been cut and practice squad, never made a route, and then they finally make it, and then you get to do that for them.
Yeah.
How much do you love those moments?
It's very cool. It's very cool, and I think we have a lot of guys like that actually. And obviously, he's a big one that's been bounced around the league a little bit, been to a bunch of teams, and for us to be able to have him have a role, it's very cool. And when he's able to get the ball in his hands, it's even cooler. But yeah, he's done a great job stepping in when needed, whether it's guard or tackle. And I thought he played great against Green Bay when he was playing left tackle. And he's done a hell of a job.
You got the Bears this week. They played you pretty tight on Thanksgiving. Now, I think that game in the first half probably could have been. You guys could have maybe extended that lead a little bit more than you should have. You probably look at that and
sure.
Ifs and buts and candy nuts every day for Christmas, right?
Yeah, you're right. If we scored in the red zone every time, we would have been up by more points. But they're a good red zone defense.
Yeah. And speaking of that, just what maybe needs to change with the red zone a little bit facing them, and what's that dynamic when you face a team a second time?
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of difference when a team has success like that against a certain area? Do they tend to do the same thing? Will they change it up a little bit, knowing that you're probably going to change it up? Like, How does that dynamic work within the
chess
division?
game that you play.
Yeah. Is that the fun part for you?
It is fun. It's fun for Ben and I, and more for him. He's trying to decide, what play to call and what design to come up with tonight and throughout the week. But it's cool to see, to play that game a little bit. Now it becomes even more complicated when they change coaching, and so then you don't even really know what's the new guy's philosophy. So there are a lot of pieces there, but at the same time we're going to change things as well, so they'll have to prepare for that. And we got to be better in the red zone against them this week, and I know that's a point of emphasis, but they are a good red zone defense, but we got to find a way to continue being a good red zone offense.
Well, you guys have found a way to be a good team on the road all season long. 6-0. I think you're the only team in the NFL that's undefeated on the road. What is it about that you guys like about just being on the road?
Detroit versus everybody, man.
Is that what it is? Is this as simple?
It is, and 3 home games in a row is cool. Don't get me wrong, in front of our fans, but sometimes you like going on the road and feeling everyone against you. And I'm sure we'll have a pretty good contingency out there of Lions fans, but you like that feeling a little bit. You like hearing the crowd get quiet when you throw a touchdown. You like having that everyone's against you feeling, and we'll get that for the next 2 weeks.
It really hasn't been that in some places, though. I mean, this fan base has traveled so much. You've had some of that on the road. Maybe that's helped a little bit too. But cold weather game, 30 degrees but no precipitation. Obviously, quarterbacks love that part of it. Just what's your approach to games like this when it's going to be kind of cold, and that turf tends to be slick sometimes when it's cold? Do you have a certain approach to those games? The gloves, no gloves. What's your kind of thought on that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I've got different tools I can use. Like you mentioned, the gloves. We'll see how it goes on Sunday if I feel like I need them.
What's the determining factor?
Usually just pregame, I can tell.
Oh, really?
Yeah, right away.
Just feel the ball, or
just
feel,
yeah. And I throw it. Sometimes I joke with myself. I throw it better with the gloves on, so I feel good with those things on. And then just layers if it's cold, and you go right ahead. But we've had some good success on the road and in some of these cold weather games, and if that's what it is again, and we need to play accordingly, we will.
Division opponent, those are always tough.
Yep.
Final stretch here. Look, you guys control your own destiny, and that's got to be the fun part about this, right? I mean, you guys know if you win, you're the number 1 seed, you get that bye, and everything rolls through Detroit. That's got to be the goal, right?
Yeah, it's great. It is the goal. It certainly is. And to be able to come off a loss like we did this late in the season and still be able to say that is a testament to what we've done up to this point. But, you got to go do it. And that's the challenge. Is we got 3 good teams ahead of us. Starts with the Bears this week. But, we got to go win this one first and move on from there.
Well, it should be a fun one. Go do it.
Appreciate you. Yep, no problem.
Welcome back to the Twentyman Huddle podcast. I am very happy to welcome in Mark Potash. He has been covering the Chicago Bears for the Sun-Times since 1987, so he's been in it for all the good, all the bad. Mark, you're currently in a little bit of bad, 8 straight. Just what's the mood in Chicago right now? You obviously got off to a terrific start, 4-2, and things have kind of just come off the rails. A couple really tough losses late in games. What's kind of the mentality there to finish out the last 3 games and finish this thing strong?
I think more just resignation. I think after such a disappointment, this was supposed to be the year that the Bears kind of went against the grain or their history, because they had the quarterback, they had the receivers, they were seemingly set up, they had a good defense, they were 5-3 at the end of last year, and it just all fell apart in very typical fashion. And so I think there's hope. There's always hope that the coaching change will be better. But at this point, it's been so long now. I think 11 winning seasons out of the last 12, and it's been so long. And Lions fans know exactly what I'm talking about. They've been through the same thing, and the Bears are trying to get to that point where the Lions are, and they just haven't been able to do it. So I think fans are just. I think they're at a point now where they used to have hope, and now they just have to see it to believe it. And so so frankly, the mood is down here, even with like the best quarterback prospect the Bears have ever had. And now the fear is that they're ruining them, and as has happened so often before. So to answer your question, in a kind of a roundabout way, just very down and just discouraged, probably more than anything else, and not very hopeful.
Well, Lions fans can certainly vouch for the fact that it just takes the right head coach. It takes that right kind of guy that brings in that atmosphere. Certainly Detroit's found that with Dan Campbell, and Chicago will be looking for the same thing. Is there a fear when you look at Caleb Williams, got off to a great start, and look, he's doing some things, I think, that go maybe under the radar. The lack of interceptions, I think that's rare for rookies. He takes care of the football, but he's been missing some guys, and it looks like he's regressed a little bit here down the stretch. Is that the fear that this kid maybe goes through so much adversity that he can't bounce back? You've been close to him. Is that a worry at all, or do you think he's got the right mindset?
No, I think that's definitely the concern. Look, Caleb Williams is better than Justin Fields. He's better than Mitch Trubisky. It's a different animal. There's no doubt that this guy has a much better chance to be special than the previous two quarterbacks did. But it's gotten to the point now he's on his third coordinator, a second head coach already, and the way he's played the last couple weeks, there is starting to be that fear that here we go again, and that even though in the right hands, there's no doubt that he could be an elite quarterback, much, like I said, much more so than either Fields or Trubisky. I think the fear is that he's wearing down and that they will, ruin him as has happened before. So, yeah, there's a definite fear of that. There's no certainty that that this guy will be able to rise above the muck of Chicago Bears football and kind of and rise above it and be great. I think it's pretty clear now that he needs the right coach and the right GM and just the right everything to be good. He can't lift a team on his shoulders. He's not that good. He's not Patrick Mahomes, but he needs a lot of help. He needs help to at least get in that realm. And the fear is that that it might not happen because the Bears are just dysfunctional.
Look, we've seen him at his best. That second half versus Detroit, I mean, he was really, really good. Had 3 touchdown passes, nearly brought them back. So we know it's there, and he's done it in stretches. But that first half was, I think, 53 yards. I think they only had maybe 3 first downs or whatever it was. 0 points were shut out. They've been shut out in the first half the last 3. What's really just been the issue to start games, and how do they start faster Sunday against Detroit?
Well, I don't know, and they don't know. That's the more important thing. They really, they've been trying to start fast all season. They've had a problem with that, even when they were playing well. I think they struggled with starting. I don't know why. That's one of the things when you ask them, they really have no clue. They just said we want to be better, and and they always aren't. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, other than that there's not a very good offense. And I'll tell you, there's one interesting thing I thought about that Lions game. That they had the slow start and then they picked it up, but in a moment of extreme decision, but even though it was the lack of a timeout that got Matt Eberflus fired, Caleb Williams also kind of didn't really rise to the moment, and he kind of froze in that moment himself, and that was, to me, I've been watching the rest for a lot. That to me, that was a little bit of a red flag, that he doesn't have quite the instinct that a Joe Burrow has, that a Patrick Mahomes has. He's done that before. I think the week before, or a couple weeks before, he had played a similar situation, played a great second half against the Vikings, but took a 12-yard sack in overtime when he held onto the ball for 9 seconds, which most quarterbacks just know not to do. So he's made a couple errors that, frankly, kind of a little bit red flaggish about just what he can do. And so I think that was kind of an underrated part with Eberflus getting fired. That was kind of an underrated facet to that Lions game, when he really should have responded to the urgency of the moment. And even though the coach maybe should have called timeout, he should have responded and gotten his team to the line faster and played that better. So they're a little bit So I know your question was about the slow starts, but to me was the bigger impact of that game, and that just shows you how he really needs help. More than he can't just do it on his own. So I think that's a little bit of a cause for concern. But anyway, to your question, I'll be honest. I'm at a loss. The Bears are at a loss. They don't know why they're starting so slow. What happens is that when they turn it on in the second half, you know they've got it, but that's typical of the Bears. They have it in them, but there's always something wrong, and and they just haven't figured it out.
No, I think that was a good point by you, actually, at the end of the Bears game, because I thought that went a little bit underreported. Obviously, your coach has got to have your back, and when it gets down to 14, 13, 12, he's got to say, okay, look, the kid doesn't got it. Let's call the timeout. Let's refocus. We can get out of bounds. Let's do that. But Williams should have, at this point, he's not really a rookie, right? And he should have. So I think it actually is a good point. I thought it wasn't talked about as much at the end of that game. Injury-wise, we know where the Lions are at. Obviously, it's a huge storyline in the NFL, 20-plus guys on injured reserve. But how's Chicago doing injury-wise heading into this one? They're going to have most of their pieces. Any guys maybe on the fence?
Well, they've had some injury issues, but hasn't been a big problem at all. They lost Andrew Billings early, and he's a big part of their run defense. But their run defense has been leaky all year for a team that led the NFL in run defense last year, and that was a few weeks ago. Recently, their biggest issue, I think, is at left tackle, where Braxton Jones is out. And last week they started a rookie, Karan Amagaji, and he just had one of those bad rookie games. He's a third-round draft pick in his first NFL start. On the road in a dome. It was just a bad situation, and he had just had a bad game with holding penalties and gave up a strip sack and stuff. So I think they'll go back to him. And the issue there, of course, is that at least from a Bears perspective, is that they have a veteran who should be able to fill in Larry Borum. But Larry Borum has been so ineffective this year that they literally went with a rookie and put him in a bad spot. Knowing that it was going to be a bad spot. It just shows you how bad the Bears are on their offensive line and their depth, which Ryan Poles, their GM, thought was going to be a strength. Said that would be. He said this is the best depth I've ever had on the offensive line. Was very sold on it, and I mentioned that because that just typifies how disappointing the Bears have been. What they thought were strengths have become weaknesses, and that's, as you guys know, I keep saying it. That's how you have a disappointing season, and so that's probably the biggest. The biggest injury concern right now is on the offensive line, where they're just struggling.
Yeah, to your point, 194 rushing yards for the Lions on Thanksgiving a few weeks ago, averaged 5.9. So they've struggled in that regard the last 2 weeks. They're hoping that they can get back on track the way they did against Chicago. What's the key, Mark, for Chicago on Sunday? To snap this 8-game losing streak, to force the upset. What do you think's the biggest key? What does Chicago have to do Sunday to kind of break this thing, get back in the W column, and really hand Detroit a huge loss?
Well, I hate to say it, but they have to get off to a fast start. I mean, they can't keep counting. They can't keep counting on rallying in the second half. Now, they have played the Lions tough, even as the Lions have gotten better here in the last few years. They beat them at Soldier Field last year, played them tough at Ford Field the last 2 years. They do play them well, and the Lions kind of play down to the Bears' level a little bit. That's been they've done that. So I think I anticipate it still being a close game, a competitive game. But the Bears really just need to get off to a fast start, because they're home now for the first time in 3 weeks, and Bears fans are not happy. And if the Bears get off to a bad start, the Boo Birds are going to be coming out pretty quickly, and this team has not responded well to adversity. They lost on the Hail Mary, and that has totally turned their season around. They have not won since. And they have just not done well in adverse situations. So I think it's almost cliche to say it, but they have to get off to a good start, because even playing at home, that's almost going to be a detriment, because their own fans are going to be all over them if they don't start fast.
Hey, I wanted to ask you something, maybe a little off the field, but just the stadium talk there in Chicago. Where's that sit right now? I know Lions fans heard that could be a retractable roof. We could have a dome in Chicago. Obviously, that could bring a lot of national events and stuff like that to Chicago. Lions fans are certainly excited about those prospects. Where does that stand stadium-wise in Chicago? Is that still kind of yet to be determined?
Yes, it's been almost you can almost call it a boondoggle. The way it's so typical the way Bears have handled it. This is part of the dysfunction that the Bears the Bears have just been racked with. Their previous team president Ted Phillips arranged what looked like a pretty good deal out in the suburbs in Arlington Heights for a dome stadium. No retractable roof. They will not do that. It will be a dome stadium. And they looked like they were all set for that. And then they hired Ted's replacement, Kevin Warren, who was with the Big Ten and the Vikings. And he, typical of the Bears, they hired a guy to go in the completely opposite direction. He wants to go in Chicago, and he's dead set on building a stadium in Chicago. And even though he's kind of been rebuffed in those efforts, he's still trying to do it. And so the Bears are kind of, slip sliding their way to this, which should have been a much easier. They had a much better deal, a much easier deal in Arlington Heights, a huge tract of land where Arlington Park was. And they destroyed a world-class horse racing facility. They tore down Arlington Park to create even more land for this great thing in Arlington Heights, and now they want to play in Chicago. So that's so typical of the Bears. I don't know where they are. I still think they'll end up in Arlington Heights. There was a tax issue that the Bears were concerned about, which to me financially was pretty minor, but to them was a big deal. But that has since been solved. So so if they want to go to Arlington Heights, they can. But they're dead set on Kevin Warren is set on having a stadium in Chicago on the lakefront, if possible. And right now, who knows where they're at? I just hope I'm alive to see it at this point because they're just taking so long to get it done. But to answer your question, all I can tell you is it's a typical Bears deal. It's harder than it should be.
Well, Mark, I know it's been a tough season. You've been through a bunch of them. I certainly have over my 15 years here too. But look, like you said, these two teams play tough when they do play. That's just kind of been the MO. And so I expect a pretty good one on Sunday. It should be tough. It looks like we're going to avoid some precipitation, but it'll be cold. We will be outdoors. At least it sounds like maybe for the foreseeable future until they figure that out. But should be a good one, Mark. I appreciate you taking the time so much. Make sure any Chicago news you need, Mark Potash is the guy there in Chicago. Been doing it for a long, long time for the Sun-Times. Appreciate you taking the time, and we'll talk to you on Sunday.
Okay, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.